Hey guys, it's Jackson here from Titanic Games, and today what we're going to be doing is creating a temperature modifying volume that we'll be able to place in the world wherever we want, and it will modify our world temperature, kind of based on some parameters that we'll set. Okay, so before we get started though, I want to point out a couple little changes that I made off screen. Okay, it's just really simple things. First, if we go into Blueprints, Core, Survival Character, you'll notice that I just categorized all of our variables into a temperature category, and all the functions related to that into a temperature category as well. So you can go ahead and do that if you'd like, or organize them however you see fit. And then same thing back in Blueprints, Weather Manager. I just did the same thing here, right? Categorize some of our things just to tidy it up a little bit. Okay, nothing crazy, just a little organizational stuff. All right. So we'll actually close the Weather Manager because we don't need it, but we do need our survival characters, so we'll leave that guy open. All right. Now, inside of our Blueprints Weather folder, let's go ahead and create a new Blueprint class. So right-click, go to Blueprint Class, and create one of type Actor. We'll call this BP_Weather Modifier. Okay. And we'll open this up. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little billboard component that we'll be able to kind of use as the identifier for where this actor is in the level. Okay, so we'll add a billboard component. I'm going to replace the root with it. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it at this little head. I think it's kind of cool, and I just want it to be different than whatever our weather modifier volumes was, or not our weather modifier. Excuse me, whatever our weather managers was. Okay, so our weather manager has the target icon, so we want this to be a little different. Okay. So there we go, we got that. Next, let's go ahead and add another component. This time it'll be a box collision. Okay, and we can just call this, I guess, overlap volume, or just volume in general. Let's call it volume. So compile and save. All right. Let's see. Now, what we're going to do for the volume here is, it's easy enough to click on the volume itself and then change the box extent, but we'll just add a variable here that we'll be able to change it to. So we'll create one, and we'll just call this box extent. Okay, make this a vector, make it editable, compile and save, and we'll give it some default values really quick, just so we don't forget. I'm going to say, how about we do 200 by 200 by 150. Okay, so the reason I'm doing 200 by 200 by 150 is because this is, half heights, I guess. So this is really going to create a box that's 400 by 400 by 300. Okay, so just something to be aware of there. Next, let's go to our construction script. We're going to take our volume, drag it in. We're going to drag it out and say set box extent. Okay, plug that in. All right, and then we'll take our box extent volume here, get it, or not volume, but our box extent variable, and plug that in. All right, so if we compile and save, you should see it grew automatically. But now when we place it in the level, okay, we'll go ahead and do that really quick. When we place it in the level, we now have this variable here that we can easily, slide to adjust, and we don't have to select the volume itself to be able to change its box extent. Okay, so that's just kind of a little helpful feature for any of your artists or you yourself, or level designers or whatever who might be using it. Okay, so back in our weather modifier, let's go into the event graph now, and we're going to get rid of everything, compile and save it. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll take our volume, we're going to right click, add an event, add on component begin overlap. Okay, so we're going to be using overlap events here to kind of change our world volume. All right, so we also need to add the on component end overlap because we need to reset any effects or any kind of changes that we apply. All right. So next, what we need to do is let's add a couple variables here. So this first one, we're going to call it override local world temp. Okay, and add a question mark because this is going to be a Boolean. Okay, and we're going to use this to determine whether or not we want to, completely override the world temperature, or if we just want to apply, like a plus or minus value to the world temperature. Okay, so we'll compile and save that. Make sure it's editable so you can edit it. All right, from the editor here. We'll add another one that we're going to call new local, or let's call this overridden world temp. Okay, make that editable as well, but this is going to be a float this time. Okay, then we'll create another one that we will just call temperature modifier. Okay, or we could call this area temperature modifier. That might be better. Okay, area, we'll make it short, so area temp modifier. All right, so essentially this is how it's going to work. If this value, or if this boolean here is true, then we're going to be using this overridden world temp float. Otherwise we'll be using the area temp modifier. Okay, so we'll compile and save. Now next what we're going to do is we're going to take the other actor of our onComponentBegin overlap event, and we're going to cast to our survival character. Okay, because we want to make sure that it's our character. Now from here what we can do is, well, we need to create a function on our character that we'll be able to use to, I guess, change some of these values, okay, or change some of our characters' temperature values based on the values in this class. Okay, now before we leave, let's go ahead and just duplicate this, because we also want to make sure that we are casting to our characters, so we can like on end overlap, so that we can reset the effects as well. Okay, so we'll go back to our survival character. Okay, and we're going to create a new function. This function we will call apply let's see, temperature modifier. Right, now I was a little bit kind of hesitant to put this in this class, right? It probably could be done, it would probably make more sense, I guess, to do it inside the weather modifier, but for our purposes this works completely fine, and in fact it might prove to be a little beneficial later. So it's up to you, really. Just make sure that you follow along and do implement it the same way. Okay, so what we'll do with the apply temperature modifier is we're going to add a couple inputs here. So this first one, we're going to call this override world temp. All right, did I spell that wrong? Yes, I did. So hard to see sometimes. Override world temp. There we go. Okay, I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys. Okay, so next we need to add another one, and this one we will call override temp. Okay, or rather overridden temp. All right, because this will be the temperature coming through that we're going to use to override our world temperature. So compile and save that, and then we'll add one more float that we'll just call let's see, additional modified temp. And the reason I'm calling it additional modified temp is because, let's say you are overlapping multiple volumes or something that all modify temperature or whatever. The way we're going to be doing this is just taking this value and adding it onto our area temperature modifier here. Okay. All right. So next what we're going to do is we're going to actually take this and we're going to promote it to a variable. Okay. So we'll promote this to a variable, and we'll just call it is world temp. Man, my hands are really off today. Okay, is world temp overridden. Okay, question mark. All right, and we're going to be using this inside of our let's go find it, inside of our update body temp function, or specifically this get modified temp function, but we'll do that in a second. Okay, so back here, let's now take this overridden temp and we're going to promote that to a variable too, and we'll just call this overridden world temp. Okay, hook that up. All right, now actually before let's see, actually never mind. Okay, so this will be good. All right, now this last one though, what we want to do is we'll take our area temperature modifier, drag it out, set it. Okay, but we're just going to perform a simple addition here. So we'll take this, drag it out, do a float plus float, hook this up, and the value we want to add is our previous area temperature modifier. Okay, so this value coming in can be both positive and negative. Okay, either way it will influence our temperature. Okay, I'll add a little reroute node if I can click it, just to make it a little tidier, and there we go. We have our our function. So next let's go into our update body temperature function here, and we're going to go into this get modified temp. Okay. Now what we're going to do for this return value now is we're going to drag out and we're going to do a select node. Okay. So plug this in. Okay. And we're going to select a different value depending on this new variable. This is world temperature overridden. Okay. So we'll take that, plug it in. So you should see it now says, either false or true. Okay, so if it's false, we're going to use, the same setup we've had before. Okay, so that's really simple. Now if it's true though, we want to take our overridden world temp, get it, and now we could just plug this straight in, but what I want to do is allow the clothing temperature modifier to still play a role. Okay, you could do the same with the area temperature modifier. But I guess one thing to consider is how in the apply temperature, right, we're doing this little part, oops, my bad. We're doing this part here, okay, and we're going to always be passing in a value here, so you just need a way to, I guess, cancel it out, okay, if you wanted to use that is. But I'm not, so I'm just going to do a plus, so float plus float, control to drag that, hook these up, okay, because we don't need to get another one. And then just plug it into true. Okay, so we'll compile and save now. Now we have that function made, so we can go back to our weather modifier, and since it was made on our character, right, we'll take this, we'll say apply temperature modifier. Alright, so this will show up now. We'll compile and save really quick. And now we just, really all we need to do is take these values and plug them in. Okay, take overridden world temp, plug that in, and then area temp modifier. Oops. Plug that in. Okay. So then now that will apply the temperature modifier for us. Now we need a way to remove it as well. So we'll do the same thing. Okay, we'll just call this. Okay. But now, no matter what, right, regardless of whether this was true or false, okay, we always want to make sure that we set it back to false when we leave a weather modifier volume. Okay, now for these two right here, we're going to take our two variables and we're going to actually just multiply them by by a -1. So we'll do float times float, multiply by -1, plug that in, and that will give us the opposite value, I guess. Okay, then we'll take our area modifier, get this, do the same thing. Okay, plug this in, plug that in, straighten it out. Actually, now that I think about it, I just remembered that we're not actually adding anything like we're doing with the area temperature modifier. Okay, so we don't actually need to multiply by a -1. We can just set it back to 0. All right, or you could leave it as is, I guess. But if you do want to have kind of potential opportunities for having multiple overridden temps in one area, then I would suggest adding a plus using this kind of same setup as the area temperature modifier. All right, and then in your weather modifier volume, then you would use this negative when you plug it back in. But for us, we can just leave it at 0. Okay, and that'll be fine. Okay. So yeah, the main thing is just making sure that override world temperature is 0, and then you're reversing the area temperature modifier. Okay, so we'll compile and save, and now hopefully we did everything right. So we might be able to test this out. So what I'll do is I'm just going to add, if you recall, we added the starter content, so I'm going to go into architecture. I'm going to add a floor piece here. I'm just going to create a very simple little house, I guess. 2 by 2. Here's our house. Okay. Add a little door to go in. Something like that. Okay, so I'll just I'll pause the video and I'll see you guys in a second when I'm done. Alright, so we're back. All I did was just basically just block out a really simple little house. Okay, so nothing special here. But let's go ahead and try out our weather modifier. So what we'll do is we'll take our weather modifier here. Okay, if you haven't added it to the level, you can easily do that by going into weather and dragging it in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of move it into position. Now, the reason I chose the dimensions I did was because, well, I guess I find that they work pretty good for, sizes of rooms. As you can see, this fully encapsulates the building here. Okay, so what we're going to do next is with the weather modifier selected, we can go into the details panel of it, and under default here we should find the variables that we added. Okay, so what we're going to do to test this is for override local world temp, I'm going to make that true. Or actually, let's go into the weather modifier first. Let's give these some default values. So let's take the overridden world temp. I'm going to give it like a default of, let's just say 72, right? Maybe, just a very base number. Area temp, I'll just say 5, for example. And then overridden or override local world temp, well, I'll make that true by default. Okay. So compile and save and go back. Okay, now you should see the updated values. Now this blueprint is really for you to allow anyone working with you or you yourself to be able to just really quickly customize the volumes or the temperature modifiers that you have throughout your game. Okay, so as you can see here, we have it's set to override the local world temp, and then it's going to override it to 72 degrees, and I am doing Fahrenheit, so that's what it means. But if we were to leave this off, then it would just add 5. Okay, so we'll leave it on, and we'll go ahead and test this out. But one thing I want to say is that, so if I press play, you'll see in the top right, oops, let's see if I can, this isn't working very well. So in the top right, it has our world temp here, but this is being updated inside of our weather manager, so we kind of need to change up the way that we update the world temperature. Okay, so we'll do that now. So we'll go to our content browser, open up the UI folder and the UI game HUD. Let's go ahead and take this text block here. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and create a binding for it. Okay. Now it's essentially going to have, well, so it's going to have a lot less stuff than what we had for the set world temp here. Okay. But we'll actually still repurpose this so that we can use it. Okay, so we have this, this function, and what we'll do with it is make it pure. Okay, and we can also make it const. So we'll compile and save there. We'll go back into this get world temperature. And what we want to do is take our character reference. We want to say get modified temp. Okay, and what that does is, it gets this function here, right, which returns, whether, a certain value depending on whether or not we've overridden the temperature. So that's what we want. Okay. Next, what we can do is we can take our set world temp, bring it out here, plug this guy in. Okay, and then all we need is the degree type. So if we want, we know we have a reference to our weather manager on our character, so we can say get weather manager, and then we can say get degree type. Okay, take that guy, plug it in, and I guess all we need now is a return value. Okay, so we'll go back into this set world temp function, and instead of setting the temperature here, okay, let's actually delete both of, or excuse me, instead of setting the text there, we'll delete both of those, and we'll just add, let's see, we'll select the function here and go to outputs, and we'll add a new one of type text. Okay, and we'll just simply call it text, I guess. We'll drag this first one out here, plug in result, hook it up to our switch for Fahrenheit, and then we'll do the same thing down here. Hook this up, plug this into Celsius, add a little reround node to tidy it up, and there we go. So now our function's good to go. Compile and save that and go back to our get world temp binding. Okay, now if we just refresh this node, the text output should show up. And then we can just plug that right in, and there we go. All is right in the world. Okay, now the last thing that we need to do is go back to our weather manager and make sure that we don't call this function anymore, because we're not going to be updating it from the weather manager. We're going to be updating it, in the UI itself now. Okay, so go back to blueprints, weather manager, and Let's see if I can remember where it is. I believe it's in the update. If we click the drop down for temperature, we should find update world temperature, and it'll be over here. Okay, so we can get rid of that. Now technically we don't even need the HUD reference anymore. All right, but you know, we'll just leave it for now because it might come in handy later. So everything should be working now, I hope. Let's just double check. Set HUD reference, that we're not calling anything we shouldn't be. Start updating temp. Okay, that's good. All right, so everything else seems okay. All right, so let's go ahead and press play now. So you can see our world temperature is 76.8, whatever, rising. Okay, and it's updating our body temp perfectly. All right, now if we go inside of this house now, we have that volume set up. So what it should do is it should override our world temperature to that volume, or to the temperature that we told it to. So if we walk in, it's now 72, and the temperature isn't going to be influenced, I guess, by the outside variation. All right, and we can just kind of chill. So there you go. Pretty simple stuff. Just to show you how the area temp modifier works. Okay, this would be an option more for like if you have like a big expanse of air, land. Maybe there's like a specific part of your environment that's really cold outside, right? This might be something better to do. But if you press play, right, we walk in, it just added 5 on top of what we already have going on. Okay, so yeah, there you go. There's how to do it. As you can see, it was fairly simple to do. I will say there are definitely improvements that can be made to this, and further extensions that you can make to it as well. But for all intents and purposes, it's working fine. It's working good. So yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you like it, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.